Miami goes into a game with Ohio State and completely dominates from start to finish. Blake Ruffino, Joe DeLeone, Ruffino and Joe Show. My guy, we're going to talk about what we just witnessed, but my goodness, this Miami defense allowing one touchdown or two touchdowns, in the midst of 8 quarters, highly impressive. They take down Ohio State. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, we talked about this, or I actually more specifically talked about this, how I thought that this upset was possible. I thought that, more importantly, I thought that Miami was going to cover, but I didn't think it was going to look this dominant. And the bigger reason why I thought that this could come to fruition was because that Miami's defensive line reminded us of what they were at the beginning of the year. They were physical. They were dominant. They were overwhelming for opposing offensive lines, and that was what would happen this entire game. They completely manhandled Ohio State. And Ohio State was extremely arrogant in how they approached this game. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I got to give my flowers to what this Hurricanes team did. I love watching football teams that come to hit. I love watching teams that want to knock somebody's head off. That was what Miami did. Every single opportunity that they had, Blake, they took advantage of it to lay a gigantic hit. And a lot of the things that have been setting them up for success that they did really well at the beginning of the year when I really loved them and I bought into them as a national championship capable team, they have absolutely returned to it. Running the ball, lining up and just completely mauling people up front on both sides of the ball. This Miami team, I think, needs to be taken, much more seriously than what many of us in the media were doing going into the playoff.
Now, I will say this. God help me, I know they just won. If Georgia wins, you got Carson Beck versus Georgia in what is going to be a knockdown street fight with two teams that just love to be physical. But we'll get to that if it does occur. Look, you bring up the game, and we had different thoughts on what Ohio State needed to do to win the game. And your thought was giving the ball to Bo Jackson. I'm just like, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. They ran the ball a little bit better than what I thought. Joe, majority of Bo Jackson's yards comes on that one scoring touchdown drive, the 55 yards on that drive rushing in total. But outside of that, he was completely bottled up. They kept running power to the numbers, and finally Heatherman in the fourth quarter adjusted to it. But this comes down to that Miami defensive line. And listen, Blake, he doesn't play defensive line, but Scott is well playing on the end line of scrimmage. You and I have had this philosophical debate, and you have agreed. When he's on the end line of scrimmage as a former center and he comes as much as he does, I'm legitimately going to count him. And they baited Julian Sayin. And you got a pick six. And you dominated up front. And you leaned on him. And you leaned on him. And you leaned on him. You came out with a couple of haymakers. The pick six by Scott, absolutely electric. But, Joe, the God's honest truth is we talk about so many things when it comes to college football. Transfer portal, NIL, all these different changes. And the team that had the better offense and defensive line won. The more physical team won. Everybody had questions, myself included. I don't want to say we called out Ruben Bain a couple of weeks ago, but we kind of did. Has been absolutely dominant. Absolutely dominant. The two biggest drives that Miami needed him, he performed. This team is got another game under their belt. They had 7 sacks, Joe, in game 1 versus A&M. They had 5 tonight. They have 12 sacks in 2 college football playoff games. That is insane. They have given up 2 touchdowns, Joe, in 8 quarters of play. Teams can't run the ball on them. Teams can't move the ball on them consistently. And it takes a guy like Jeremiah Smith to do what he did. And that was, I thought, going away from him was a little bit foolish. They were bracket covering him. The 3rd and 15, they were doing that all night. Keep running freaking hitch routes with him or hit him on a deep post and let him outrun everybody. You're right about Ryan Day being dumb to some regard. Hey, they're bracketing him. Hit the hitch, hit the post. Why did you go away from it? Completely idiotic. But it didn't matter because every single time that they needed to make a play, Miami's front offense and defensive line, whether it be 61, whether it be 4, they made it. Another thing I'd say, this is not going to show up on the stat sheet, but I have 3 third downs here, Joe. Carson Beck ran for a first down. 3rd and 6, he ran for 7 yards and a first down in the fourth quarter when they needed the drive to go in and score. It's a 3rd and 6, and he runs over Sonny Styles to get the first down and rolls over him, and he gets up and he pumps for a first down. The next 2 runs, they go to a back who hadn't been in the game all season long, and Shamar Brown, and he ran for first downs. They leaned when they need to. But Carson Beck's legs on critical third downs, Joe, and in critical moments, I can't believe I'm saying this. Carson Beck with another flawless game, won't show up on the stat sheet, but another flawless game by number 11.
Well, and he didn't do anything particularly gaudy. I mean, his average.
Hold on, pause. The runs on third down are. I don't care when they're sending 7 and he's getting away from it. That dude.
Well, I'm just getting at that, like, nothing. He didn't throw for 350. He also didn't have any of those big, like, clutch throws that we kind of thought that he would need, like Mendoza had. But he played the role. He converted when they needed him to. He understood that when nothing was opening up. Here's the biggest thing that helps with Carson Beck. He plays at his best when he understands his role. And I think that when he understands nothing's opening up, I don't need to take a risk. He did this all the time at Georgia last year. And we talked about this at the beginning of the season where he mentioned it at media days where he didn't want to try to be Superman. He didn't want to try and do everything. He doesn't need to. He's got a really good running back room. He's got a really good offensive line. They were giving him time. The old version of him would have absolutely tried to force the ball into a window that was not there. And that old version of him showed up in October when they went through that rough stretch. The whole team took a step backward. But they have returned back to what worked really well in September with all these things. And I think a big part of it is with Beck and him just being just really composed and being willing to run for a first down if things are breaking down and he's not seeing anyone open. That offensive line did a tremendous job of protecting him, by the way, because it felt like he had an hour every single time that he dropped back. It all comes down to, though, Blake, just to reinforce here, Miami came out, punched Ohio State in the mouth. And I think Ohio State, a lot of Ohio State fans, they had an arrogance about them that they thought that they weren't going to get upset. A lot of the commentary, if you suggested that an upset was possible, it was a ridiculous premise, and that was wrong. This Miami team had one of the most talented rosters in college football this season. The problem was that they had a rough stretch in the middle of the year. They lost 2 stupid games that they shouldn't have. But in the college football playoff world that we constantly forget, you just need to get in. It's just like the NFL playoffs. How many times recently has the Chiefs not had a great record and they got in and they went on a run? It's how this works.
Last year.
But my point here is that if you're in the playoff field and you're locked in, you can convert, you can execute, you can win, you can fight, you can do all of those things.
Especially when you're that talented up front on both sides of the football.
Damn straight. Homegrown guys, but no, I was going to say homegrown guys with all those line of scrimmage bodies that were dominating this past 2 games.
Well, look, I know McDonald had a good game, right? Because he did. I thought James Brockmeyer had a phenomenal game going up against him when they went to that Bear front, and they just leaned on him. 61's going to be a top 5 pick. I'm fully convinced.
Top 10 at least.
People have compared him to Penei Sewell. Joe, I think he's better. I flat out think that he's better. The Brown run where he's moving the pile and getting the first down, they just leaned on him. And listen, teams that can run the ball in these kinds of rock fights are just going to win, and Ohio State couldn't. And Joe, I got to bring this up. The 2 most physical lines of scrimmage that Ohio State faced this season, I would say you could throw in Texas, but the 3 games that they faced off against the toughest opponents, they couldn't move the ball. They couldn't move the ball at all. And you get in another situation like you got against Indiana, and Joe, quite frankly, the more talented offense and defensive line, and I'm not trying to throw shade in Indiana at all. I'm really not. Joe, they got bullied, brother. Like,
Yep.
to be blunt with you, I know that this was a 3-point game at a given point in time, and I get it. That's the style.
They got bullied.
They got bullied. In certain moments, the first half, they got bullied. And then the fourth quarter, man, they got pushed around. And that's the thing that you look at. I thought Curry got absolutely abused. I thought McDonald at moments and times. Look, you got Fletcher, who we haven't mentioned yet. I mean, how many tough runs and broken tackles did Fletcher have tonight? I'm going to love to see that PFF broken tackle list. But, Joe, they bullied them when they needed to. Defensively, Joe, I got to say this. They might be the best front seven from a talent standpoint that's left.
Oh, and, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm holding out, okay, just to make sure Texas Tech is actually legit. But
no, I think that this group's better than Texas Tech. I like Texas Tech. This is better than Texas Tech.
This is better. And their offensive line, you can win rock fights. I got to throw this out there to you, too. Teams that have had a first-round bye in the 12-team expansion are 0-5.
That's nuts. I thought that would have gotten broken this year.
Oregon,
completely nuts.
Arizona State, Boise State, and Georgia. And now Ohio State. Now, last year, you got 2 group of 5 teams in there, or one group of 5
in Big 12.
And then Arizona State. Georgia, Carson Beck literally was out. Okay. What about tonight? What about Ohio State doing? Joe, I really feel like to some degree, Miami just showed Ohio State to some degree, not like what Ohio State did to Oregon last year. But, dude, they just bullied him. And those 25 days, man, it was what it was. I know you want to talk about Ryan Day and his play calling. Thoughts on that?
I know that you did bring up here that they weren't having profound success running the ball. Bo Jackson had an 18-yard carry that kind of boosted his yards per carry average. But, like I said this coming into the game, damn it. I said this. I'm not implying that Ryan Day needed to listen to the show and listen to me, but I couldn't have been more right when I said you needed to lean on C.J. Donaldson and Bo Jackson, and you couldn't arrogantly step into this matchup thinking that Julian Sayin was going to drop back in 3rd and long situations, in first and 10 situations, 2nd and long situations, and expect them to not get pressured. Mm-hmm. Julian Sayin had a really good year. He is not the type of quarterback. He's not big enough. He's not strong enough to hang in the pocket with Ruben Bain grabbing his ass. He's just not built for that. And to think that you were going to be able to accomplish that was just stupid.
It was very arrogant.
18 carries for your running backs when Donaldson averaged 4.4 yards per carry and Bo Jackson averaged 5. You should have kept running the damn ball. And look, again, Blake, I get it. You mentioned that early they were getting stuffed a little bit. Ruben Bain had that huge play at the beginning of the game. Forget that. Sometimes to set the tone and to run the rock, you got to just keep going to it until you break through. You're supposed to have
like that. They felt that they were losing a rock fight because I felt like they blinked before Miami did, and they got a little bit intimidated.
But I think that's a soft ass approach. You're going to punch them out. So you got to punch back.
I'm with you. No, I'm with you. But to be honest with you, Mario didn't blink. Ryan Day's the one that blinked.
I get that, and I don't mind the thought of, look, we've got the best player on the field with Jeremiah Smith. And Carnell Tate didn't do anything, by the way, in this game, which was really disappointing.
Decision on that alligator arm, too.
Yeah. I think that you need to realize and understand that if you're able to fight, they were going to do everything possible to chase down Sayin and to get in his head. And to not take pressure off his shoulders, for him to have 35 passing attempts is a complete, just atrocious coaching decision by Ryan Day.
All right. I'm going to read off Jeremiah Smith's stats to you.
Okay.
because this is going to be misleading of what I'm going to say. He had 7 catches for 157 yards and 1 touchdown. Joe, they were bracketing him. What do you do against bracket coverage? What are the 2 biggest plays that he had? Either if they're on the outside, if they're on your outside hip, meaning the safety's on your outside hip, you run a slant. What did he score a touchdown on? Slant. If they're going to bracket and he's on the inside hip, when he flips his hips, you run a post. What did he have a 60-yard pass on? A 60-yard reception on? A post.
Play action. Yep.
The play action post. If they bracket and they're head up to you, you split the defenders and run a hitch. 3rd and 15, he runs a very deep hitch. He comes back on a comeback and gets it. Why did you stop? Why did you stop? See, this is the part 2 that I look at this, and I don't disagree with your Bo Jackson take and Donaldson take at all. I agree with you. At the same time, there is a person on this planet that currently plays college football that legitimately is not like anybody else. Jeremiah Smith is a different human being. He is a different animal. He is Julio Jones. He is this generation's Julio Jones. Regardless of what any of y'all want to tell me, that man is Julio Jones. They're the same height. They're the same weight. They run the same. The dreads coming out of the helmet early on in career, it's the same exact human being. They're a clone. He needs to get DNA tested. I'm just joking. The bottom line here is, why did you pull a Texas A&M like what they did in going away from Craver? Why did you go away from him in the 3rd quarter? Why? The one time you go to him, he scores. So, Joe, I just got to be real with you. I think Cornell Tate's a good player, but there are moments and times where you have you have the best college football. Fernando Mendoza is not the best college football player this season. He's not.
No, it's Jeremiah Smith.
It's Jeremiah Smith. So I know he's got 7 catches, but Joe, they literally couldn't stop him. And you couldn't move the ball. Make them go full-blown double team on his ass. Brandon Ennis has not stepped up. He hadn't either. Max Clare, where is he?
No catches. None.
No
What was he?
No, he played.
Yeah, what? I don't think their offensive game plan made much sense.
You better go buy out Chip Kelly. Who's at Northwestern? You better go buy him out because, quite frankly, the Heartline and Day connection right now has failed twice.
Absolutely
failed.
Absolutely.
But Joe, I gotta kick this over to you too. I gotta be real with you, dude. The last 2 times we've seen Ohio State, they've gotten bullied, buddy. That offensive line, that defensive line, in moments and times, they got bullied.
Well, they put a lot of guys in the NFL at both those position groups, and that was, I mean, straight up coming into the season, like that was the biggest thing that we talked about was if they don't get to another national championship, it was going to be because the offensive line and the defensive line group wasn't deep enough. It wasn't impactful enough. Their O-line got manhandled, and their defensive line didn't feel deep enough. That came to fruition. They didn't have the bodies. It was too hard to transition from all the guys that they lost.
They are so unathletic at tackle.
Yeah, it's crazy to go from Josh Simmons and have Donovan Jackson to watching those dudes get worked the way that they were.
Look, I know Elks is probably going to be in here. That is one of the
R.I.P. Elks.
Yeah, he's, man, I am not stunned. You and I talked about this during the entire lead up to this. That was a bully fest, and good on Mario for leaning into who they are. So look, 24-14 is the final. Ohio State goes down. Joe, is there anything that we missed here? I mean, I am a little stunned. I thought Miami could win. I didn't think it was going to look like that.
Here's what I will say. I didn't think it was going to look like that. But as soon as we watched that first sack where Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain met in the middle, I'm like immediately the first thought I had was
tweeted at one another.
This game's over. This game is over. That is going to be the separate. Like that wasn't supposed to happen that early, that easily. That was how I knew that this game was going to go in Miami's favor. Yeah, and it was
Julian Sayin's got a lot of growing to do. Because look, you played, and here's another thing. The last thing I'd say, Ohio State played a weak ass schedule, Joe. They played a weak ass. I got to be blunt with you. Let's take the logo off for just a moment. If that team would have played a schedule like Ohio State or USC to some extent, I do ask the just simple question, what would their record have been? Like, I mean, if
they were in Indiana, you would have been coming in here yelling about how they're overrated and they played a soft schedule. That's what you would have been doing. I know you, and that's what you would have been saying.
Hold on now. Indiana got pushed. When I said that last year, Indiana got pushed around against both top 8 opponents. The 2 teams that faced off in the national title last year, they got pushed around by. And you know that that's true. You know it's true.
I know this is
Come on.
I don't disagree with you on your premise, though. I do think that, and this is part of also what we talked about here, where you do need to be challenged during the regular season. You do need to battle through adversity. Miami battled through adversity. They had 2 bad games. They responded in the middle of the year. Ohio State's adversity came at the end of the season, and they didn't have a chance to work out the issues that were identified against Indiana. And I'm going to keep emphasizing this for anyone who wants to say this bullshit about take all the non-conference games off your schedule, schedule Rice. F that. This couldn't have been more proof that you should want to schedule important teams at the beginning of the year. It sets the table for what is an important season. More hard games prepare you for postseason battles with good teams. If you're not challenged, you're going to get punched in the mouth and you're going to lose.
Can I give an example?
Yeah.
Look at the adversity that Arch Manning went through versus what he just did today versus Julian Sayin.
Yeah.
He can go through adversity and now is paying the piper.
Right.
He's paying the piper.
Right.
So, interesting. It's going to be an interesting offseason. Joe, they better land this OC hire. They better land here. I know a guy.
Well, he's taken.
I guess he is. See y'all tomorrow. Happy New Year.